Streaming from Oklahoma's own digital studio, this is Stephen Nairns with This Week in Weather.
Hi everyone, meteorologist Stephen Nairns here. Welcome back to This Week in Weather on this July 9th, 2025 from the News on 6 digital streaming studio. Thank you as always for joining me here. Of course, as I'm sure you're well aware, the weather topic on everyone's mind here the past several days has just been the absolute catastrophe flooding event that happened in central Texas, the Hill Country area of Texas over July 4th and the July 4th weekend. And hope everyone's primary focus is for your thoughts and prayers being for everyone that was impacted by the tragedy and all the lives lost, and unfortunately still the people that are missing still being searched for. I hope you can pour all your thoughts and prayers into the families that are grieving and everyone down there doing that search and recovery efforts, and all the help those folks are going to need in the weeks, months, even years to come. We're going to talk a little bit more about that here shortly, and of course, some reminders about flooding and safety around here as well. And again, we'll be discussing that here shortly. As I always start off with, of course, a reminder about where you can find me if you are looking to suggest things that you would like to hear discussed on This Week in Weather. Getting up to this point with all of our episodes of This Week in Weather, there's been kind of something timely to talk about every week that I've led off with. But, if there are other things you would like to hear discussed that we think we can, kind of find a way to discuss in a good fashion here, a way that really helps, describe things better for you, then I might be able to on air when I have more limited time. Questions, comments, suggestions, like I said, you can find me where you can see my email address on the screen, my Facebook page, and as I continue to say, we post these on our News on 6 YouTube channel. I monitor the comments as well, and I know if that has led to several suggestions from the comments there as well, that I'll be trying to, work in some of those as we keep going further down the line, get deeper into the summer here on This Week in Weather. So again, that's where you can find me. And again, as I led off with, obviously, hope your prayers continue to be on everyone that was impacted by just the absolute devastating floods in Central Texas over the 4th of July holiday. And something that I would also, hope you would continue to keep in mind is that being your focus, and being in the position that I'm in and where the field that I work in, I don't get on soapboxes about things. That's just not an appropriate thing for me to do. But I would, ask as you continue to, pour your thoughts and comfort and prayers into the victims of this tragedy, that you also would be someone that does not contribute to the pointing fingers and all the anger and vitriol and everything that has been happening in the days after this, and folks that have tried to politicize this and everything else that goes into it. That unfortunately, as you know, more often than not, that happens with almost any tragedy anymore, just because of the world we live in. I would ask that you not contribute to that. If you're trying to look for reasons, well, why did this happen? Just from strictly from a weather standpoint. The Kerrville area that is in the San Antonio TV viewing area, and I would encourage you to go find any of those trusted meteorologists in San Antonio, TV meteorologists, National Weather Service meteorologists, who have done very, very, very thorough breakdowns of the flooding event, why it happened meteorologically, why even with advanced warning there was still such devastation and such loss of life from some things that are unfortunately beyond our control. And in that same vein, I would encourage you to get your information, from that, as far as why it happened, how you can help out, how you can help recovery efforts. Again, those folks down there locally in that area have all the resources about how, if you feel compelled to help these folks recover from that tragedy. And just encourage you. So often when rumors and theories and things like that run rampant that are not true, folks are getting it from social media, and just encourage you, not be using social media as your primary source of news. That's just where a lot of these things that are not true that just spiral out of control in tragedies after this, that's a lot of times where it comes from. So just encourage you to have your trusted sources that you always lean on for that. And again, like I said from the beginning, I hope that your thoughts after this are not on pointing fingers and just spewing anger and hate and things like that around this, but just focusing on the folks that are trying to recover from this and grieving from their losses, and thinking of them. I mentioned a few minutes ago that it's always worth discussing flooding safety for anyone. I mean, not any portion of the country. Flooding can happen anywhere. I mean, we've seen our fair share of flooding this year and over the past few years, right, with all the heavy rains that we've had at times. And, flooding and safety tips, we talk about this a lot, so none of this is necessarily new information, but I think it's always worth reminding you how quickly flooding can happen. And I know that from the visuals that you've seen from what happened over the 4th of July holiday in Central Texas, that it was very obvious how fast flooding can happen. You can kind of see the model they have on the screen here, talking about how quickly flooding can impact you and can cause people to be swept off their feet, how it can impact cars being swept away. You can see some of the stats there on the screen. 6 inches of fast rushing water can knock an adult off your feet. Doesn't sound like much, does it? Well, because it doesn't seem like much, but the power of water is something that I think so many of us underestimate. And by the way, I'm including myself in that when I say that. I know it's something I've underestimated before. It is just, flooding and rushing water is just something that so many of us, you kind of have an assumption that, well, that's okay, I'll be able to get through that. I know that impacts other people, but I'll be able to get through that. And that's not a good attitude to have for it. And like I said, that's something I will admit that's an attitude I've had in the past and have learned that you should not think that way. 12 inches of water, 1 foot of fast rushing water can sweep a car or an SUV away. 18 inches, 1.5 feet of water. Even if you have a large vehicle, larger truck, your truck can be swept away in those rushing waters as well. It just goes without saying that you need to treat flooding seriously. And this is not, again, a soapbox or saying that folks in Central Texas did not treat it seriously. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just saying that this is for everyone. Everyone needs to always think of flooding. When there's flooding potential, you need to take it seriously. Because it can just happen so quickly. It's another model, again, I mean, this kind of highlights some of the stats I was just talking about, but just kind of gives you a visualization of it. And you can kind of almost see there, again, this is just kind of an approximation on the visual, but how much water we're talking about that'd be enough to sweep away your car. And in general, when you look at that model here, you notice that we're not talking about water all the way up to the top of your car, all the way up to the top of your person here. Just, that foot, 6 inches, foot and a half of water, fast moving water, can just be incredibly powerful. And when it can happen so quickly. Sometimes there's maybe a what I would say slower lead up where you can kind of see the flood waters coming and maybe think, okay, I got some time to get out of here. But that's one of the things that so often impacts folks too, is flooding can happen, and it can happen extremely rapidly, almost fast enough that you feel like you don't have much time to react to it. So always want you to keep those kind of things in mind. And we talk about this a lot when we go to do weather talks, whether it's schools and businesses, and we talk about weather hazards, especially, of course, where we live, right? You're always thinking about tornadoes and damaging winds and things like that that can cause damage and injuries and death. And of course they can and do, and we always want you to remember that and be aware of that. But flooding kills more people on a yearly basis than tornadoes, than when we have those damaging windstorms. Again, that's not to diminish those at all, of course, but flooding is the number 2 weather-related killer in the United States. Heat, excessive heat, is the only one that kills more people in the United States on an annual basis. And here in Oklahoma, flooding has killed more Oklahomans in the last decade than any other weather-related event, than tornadoes, than damaging winds, than lightning. And again, that's not to diminish any of those. We want you to be aware of all of those. But it again just goes to tell you the power of water that so often that a lot of us can underestimate. So as I've been highlighting all these tips, I know a lot of these things are obvious, but it's just worth repeating because unfortunately every year we just have examples of flooding maybe catching folks off guard. Again, I want to emphasize, I'm not saying that for the folks in Central Texas next week, not as like a, what should have been here. It can catch anyone off guard at any time. But, and I'm, like I said, including myself in this too, we have a tendency to, if you're in your car in particular is what I'm talking about, you have a tendency to be overconfident with seeing some water over the road and going, I don't know, it looks like a few inches of water. I think I'll be okay. Don't drive through moving water. Never, ever, ever do it. You never have any idea if you see a road maybe just looks like a little water over the roadway. That road might be washed out under that water. We've seen that happen too many times where folks drive into it and then the road's gone because it's been washed away. Don't drive around barricades. People unfortunately do that too often. If barricades have been put up by emergency officials, they've been put up for a very specific reason. Don't drive around them. And we say turn around, don't drown all the time. We tell the kids a lot this, when we're doing weather presentations as well. And I know it's a phrase that might almost sound kind of corny or cheesy at times, but it's so true. It's just not worth it. If you're coming up in areas that are flood prone, you're seeing water over the roads, it is just not worth it. So turn around. With outdoor safety too, obviously, this leads into outdoor safety with summertime, with so many more people out and about during the summertime months. And again, this goes for any month of the year, not just in summertime. But folks have talked about in lieu of what happened last week down in Texas, but we've had events like this up here in Oklahoma over the years as well. Okay, what are the best ways for me to receive warnings? If we're out camping, maybe we're in an area that doesn't have good cell phone coverage. Well, I want to emphasize that it's always important for you to have multiple ways to receive weather warnings. Our News on 6 weather app. You can set that up, customize it for alerts for your location on your phone. You can set it up for multiple locations, maybe your home base, where you're camping, where your loved ones live, that sort of deal. Again, I know that goes into, okay, but what if I don't have good cell service? Well, NOAA Weather Radios, also a great tool to have that you can set up for your specific location to be alerted for severe weather warnings, excuse me. And that also can kind of be a helpful backup for you if you're in an area where cell coverage is limited. Going back to those cell phone alerts, we talked about having something like the News on 6 weather app. Those wireless emergency alerts, you'll see WEA, W-E-A alerts listed a lot. And I know those are the ones, excuse me, that come directly from your cell phone provider that are usually very, very loud, I know. And I know that a lot of people, over the years have had a tendency to maybe turn those off because you get maybe blasted by them one too many times. You go, I don't need those on. I've got my other alerts, and turn them off. I would say in general, in particular, maybe if you're set up to go camping, or you're going somewhere remote, you're going somewhere where you're going to be a little bit more out of pocket, so to speak, that would be a very good time to turn those back on. Because maybe some of your other ways to get alerts haven't gone through. That's another one that would be more likely to alert you quickly of some rapidly changing weather conditions, severe weather conditions. When you are making those camping plans, boating plans, outdoor plans, whatever they are, make sure that as you get to where you're going, locate where your nearest safe indoor shelter is. Do that right away, so you know where it is. So that's just another level of preparedness, planning ahead for if weather is going to severe weather, flooding, whatever it may be, is going to impact your location. You know where you would go if you have to act quickly. Obviously, it goes without saying, avoid being around flood-prone spots as much as possible, because, of course, that will give you a little bit of extra time as well if, severe weather, flooding, what have you, starts to happen in your location. And, when storms start happening, it's time to head inside. It's not time to go, okay, well, let's wait this out for a little bit. I might get a little bit better. Head indoors when storms are approaching before they get to you. And, if you're in a spot where maybe you are out somewhere remote and you figure out, I don't really have good, indoor alternatives for shelter. I know that it is not a fun thing or convenient thing at all to maybe go, you know what, maybe we need to just kind of jettison these plans and we need to get back in the car and go home, as opposed to staying here and waiting out a thunderstorm kind of, out in the elements. I know that's never a fun thing to consider, but maybe that is something that you factor into your outdoor plans as well, to be better safe than sorry. And I know a lot of these things, as I continue to go through all this, a lot of this is what I would consider, I'm sure, fairly obvious information, but things that are just worth highlighting once again. Now, as we plan ahead for the upcoming weekend, again, I know folks as we say, on a weekly basis this time of year, you're making your outdoor plans. If you're going to be lake bound this weekend, we've been updating you on our lake levels a lot, as you know, of course, with the incredible amount of rain we've had this year. Lake levels continue to steadily drop across Green Country. Of course, quite a few of them are still excessively high. Kaw, Keystone, Copan, Oologah, Fort Gibson Lake, all still way up there. They're steadily falling on a daily basis, but will probably take up to a few more weeks for them, most of them, to get back to what I would consider is more normal or more reasonable level. A few more lakes are getting back to a pretty good range. Skytook Lake now less than a foot above normal. So Skytook Lake's getting back into kind of a pretty good range there. Lake Tenkiller, just about 2 feet above normal. So Tenkiller's doing better. Grand Lake's starting to do better. Lake Hudson's starting to do better, and Lake Eufaula as well. So obviously, we want you to continue to use every amount of caution as you head out onto the lakes, and even these lakes that are getting into better levels still need to use caution to watch out for debris, on the lakes that had been maybe washed up from the recent heavy rains and high lake levels. But there has been some improvement on that as you head into maybe this upcoming weekend for your weekend plans. Heat stress will start to become more and more of an issue as well. Again, I know we've already had plenty of fairly hot and muggy, steamy days up to this point, but all the rain and storms that we've had from spring into early summer has kept temperatures, for the most part, from getting too out of control compared to what we can have this time of year. By this point in time last year in 2024, we had already had multiple 100-degree days and days with heat index 115, 120, just like out of control type heat and humidity. We haven't gotten there yet, thank goodness. Doesn't mean it's been, just like 60-degree weather or anything like that by any stretch. But I point that out to say that for the tail end of this week, some pretty hot and muggy days building. I'd say maybe hotter and muggier than we've been for most of the summer. As we head into Thursday and Friday, a heat index of 105 or above becoming more likely across Green Country, with highs in the mid-90s, but a heat index 105 or above. And quite a few of these days here are coming with not just a lot of wind either, so that increases the heat stress when you have the heat and the humidity and you don't have a breeze to cool you off, and also that really high sun angle. With, of course, the sunburn potential. All of those factors lead to heat stress going up quite a bit more than we've had for much of the summer up to this point. You can kind of see that on the screen there. Now, you also notice that this weekend, those temperatures start to drop back off again a little bit, which, we'll take to keep the humidity and the heat index values, or I should say the heat index and the temperatures, from getting too out of control. But you can probably imagine why the temperatures are dropping Saturday and Sunday. Yes, more rain and storm chances. We'll talk about that in just a second. And I also mentioned, from a heat standpoint, we've still got a long way to go, right, this summer, and the hotter temperatures will continue to arrive eventually. But we haven't hit 100 yet this summer. Actually, we haven't gotten anywhere close. I point that out because, again, today's date is July 9th. July 10th is the average first 100-degree day for Tulsa, kind of the long-term average of when would we expect to have our first 100-degree day of the year. That would be around July 10th. Now, of course, every year it varies, right? And actually, as you can see on the screen, the last 3 years, our first 100-degree days in 2022, 2023, and 2024 all came in late June. And then we had more to follow after that. We haven't gotten there this year, thankfully. So this is the first year in a few years where we have not had any 100-degree days in June. And we still don't see any on the horizon just yet. Partially because of the upper air pattern, the true heat dome hasn't settled in yet, and also because of the rain and storm chances. That's kind of keeping the worst of the heat at bay. Speaking of which, I talked about that heat dome, that upper level ridge. As you look on that water vapor satellite display, that summer heat dome has, a few weeks ago, it was centered over the east coast of the United States, and that's when they had their big time heat wave. The last several days here, it's been more focused off to our west across the southwest United States. And we've been in kind of a weak but persistent upper level flow pattern, at times that northwesterly flow. Again, you can see on that screen there where those arrows kind of steer from the northern Rockies into the central and southern plains. That's that northwest flow in the upper levels of the atmosphere. A couple things that can do. Of course, that can steer upper level storm systems into our area, and also that's just a signal that heat dome is not strong enough for us yet to just suppress thunderstorm development and to really push the temperatures up as high as they can go. And as we go over the next several days in the big picture, well, guess what? That pattern is pretty much going to continue. Notice the heat dome actually slides further to our west, so late in the week and into the weekend, we start seeing more of that northwest flow influence. Storm systems that develop in portions of, say, like the central northern Rockies come sliding southeast into the plains. Yes, that means more storm chances Saturday into Sunday. So for the upcoming weekend, factor that into your weekend outdoor plans. You're just talking about weather safety, right? There will be storm chances Saturday and Sunday. Not saying it's going to be a weekend washout. It won't be, rain from start to finish. But there will be chances for scattered thunderstorms through the weekend, with some locally very heavy rain. We've seen that even here in Green Country in the last day or two. Early in the week, we had significant flooding in Sallisaw from 5.5 inches of rain in about 3 hours. These kind of summertime storms that we've been getting, they can produce that kind of rainfall. They don't all produce that kind of rainfall, but they certainly have that potential. So for Saturday and Sunday, keep that in mind for your weekend plan. Storm chances will still be with us. We go into the first part of next week. The pattern is still kind of set up like that, where the heat dome is off to our west. The upper level flow pattern over Green Country is generally weak, but what that can allow for is these small little upper level waves that just kind of pop up, develop, they sit and spin, they don't move very much, and they can just lead to those persistent storm chances. We get towards the end of next week, notice that upper level air pattern, not terribly different than what we're in right now, which again, the trade-off is storm chances just don't completely go away, but it also means that the worst of the summer heat doesn't arrive quite yet. As we look at the long-range data, we've been seeing signs over the past few weeks that that heat dome tries to strengthen, build in a little more in center over the middle of the country. Just hasn't done that yet, and we're still not quite into that pattern where the heat dome fully takes over, storm chances go away, the worst of the summer heat really builds in. We are far, far, far from writing that off for the summer, right? I mean, we've got a lot of July to go through and August. Eventually, that heat dome will win out, but it's taking a little longer than it often does this time of year to start winning out, for lack of a better term. So once again, back to those weekend plans. I think Friday, most of Friday, the storm chances are still on the fairly low end side of things, hot and muggy. Heat index could easily go over 105 on Friday the way it's set up right now, which is pretty high heat stress criteria. So I want you to be aware of that. Late Friday could be some storms creeping in, and then Saturday into Sunday, again, the forecast as of now here in the middle of the week. We always encourage you to check back in over the next few days, because those storm chances for Saturday and Sunday in particular, there's a chance those could creep up over the next few days if we start seeing more signs of kind of organized storm complexes coming in for the weekend. So I want you to just be prepared for that. On the upcoming weekend, again, the trade-off would be slightly lower temperatures, but we're going to have to continue to monitor those storm chances for the upcoming weekend and possibly into the beginning of next week. Once again, you know where to find me. I mentioned about how to contact me, but where to find This Week in Weather, posted and streaming on our News on 6 YouTube channel, continuing to post these on a weekly basis. Once again, as I mentioned off the top of the broadcast, I know I talked about it a lot, but hope you can keep your thoughts and prayers and everything on the folks in Central Texas recovering from the devastating flooding and other areas of the country. There have been quite a few other areas in the country in North Carolina and parts of the East and New Mexico and other spots that have had some really devastating flooding recently as well. So I hope you can keep all those folks in your thoughts and prayers in the days and weeks and months ahead. And pray for better weather for them, and and better recovery efforts, and help recovery efforts for those folks, and everything else that they're going to need in the weeks, months to come. As always, thank you for joining me here on This Week in Weather on this July 9th. Be good to each other, be kind to each other, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for watching this Oklahoma's own digital studio live stream from the Bob Mills Weather Center. Stay with News on 6 online and on television anytime for the latest weather updates to keep you safe and informed.